In this corner of the world, there used to be peace, a solemn quiet of which nothing disturbed. This peace was home. It was to me the last bastion of hope. The rising dawn spoke its name, and the sun responded in kind. Kindness be thy name, and peace will reign. Several weeks ago, I uploaded a video on Grave of the Fireflies and Barefoot Gen. Originally, this video was also going to include In This Corner of the World, but after watching the film and reading the manga, I wanted to give it its own video. In This Corner of the World is very different from the others, and is my favorite of the three, because its story isn't so brutal in its telling, but also because the original manga, of which it is based on, is absolutely stunning. Striking a mighty contrast to the likes of Barefoot Gen and Grave of the Fireflies, In This Corner is also a modern retelling of a horrific past, which confronts absolutely the bleak nature of war. But unlike the previous titles, it sparkles in an inexplicable way. In This Corner of the World thematically fit my previous video covering war in animation, but the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to give it its own video. It lives in the same realm as Barefoot Gen and Grave of the Fireflies as war films, but as those two mirror each other so closely, In This Corner of the World, whose author was birthed from a different generation entirely, takes a very different narrative bent. It still takes the same powerful anti-war sentiments, but it's more quiet, somehow more serene, and not as doggedly violent as its predecessors. This is most likely due to the generation gap. The creators of Grave of the Fireflies and Barefoot Gen both lived through the war, and thus displayed the horrors as they were witnessed. Fumio Kono, the author of In This Corner of the World, was born after the war. In This Corner is also longer, and takes its time in displaying all the violence, both emotional and physical, undergone by its characters in the World War. And it shows also a serenity, a quiet strength, displayed by our protagonist, Suzu. Suzu grows up in Eba, a seaside town near Hiroshima, but at the age of 18, she gets married and moves in with her in-laws in Kure, a naval port city 15 miles away from Hiroshima. The story then unfolds slowly, taking its time. It is no surprise then that a core theme is the fragility and beauty of daily life. The story doesn't rush through wartime events, but rather lingers on small, intimate moments, making rice balls, sharing stories, or watching the sky. This mundane detail becomes profound when juxtaposed with the looming horrors of air raids and the atomic bomb. The loss of time to an inevitable, ever-approaching end. Another central theme is resilience. Suzu's journey highlights how ordinary people endure war, not through grand gestures, but through persistence and creativity. Her love of drawing becomes a motif for hope, and self-expression. Loss and memory also thread throughout the narrative. The film and manga don't shy away from depicting the psychological scars left by war, especially when Suzu loses a part of her body, and with it, a part of her artistic identity. But even in these moments, the narrative leans towards healing rather than despair, underscoring the idea that life, even when broken, can still be meaningful. The art of the manga is simple and tender, using soft lines and an almost childlike style to bring out the innocence of its protagonist and the texture of everyday life. Fumio Kono's artwork emphasizes expressions and quiet gestures. The panels are often uncluttered, focusing on domestic spaces and landscapes, which creates a sense of calm that is later disrupted by the war. The film adaptation elevates this aesthetic into a breathtaking, painterly animation style. Sunao Karabuchi and his team deliberately adopted a hand-drawn feel, with watercolor textures and soft color palettes. This gentle visual tone makes the brutal moments of the war even more jarring, reinforcing the thematic contrast between beauty and destruction. Additionally, the film incorporates visual metaphors that draw from Suzu's imagination, scenes that blend her drawings into the real world, further blurring the lines between perception and reality. The result is not only an emotional narrative, but also a visual meditation on how art helps process trauma. In this corner of the world, Barefoot Gen and Grave of the Fireflies all explore the civilian experience of World War II in Japan, but each approaches it differently in tone and intent. Barefoot Gen is the most visceral and graphic, with its raw, unfiltered depiction of the Hiroshima bombing and its aftermath. It aims to shock and awaken political awareness. Grave of the Fireflies is similar, a lyrical tragedy focusing on the bond between siblings as they slowly succumb to the ravages of war and social neglect. In this corner of the world strikes a more subtle and introspective tone. It is neither as confrontational as Barefoot Gen nor as overtly tragic as Grave of the Fireflies. Instead, it balances sorrow with beauty and despair with resilience. Its strength lies in showing that even during history's darkest moments, life, love, and small joys persist.